Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at the Stride Field Remote I/O modules powering and configuring. Now up on my screen, as we saw last time, here's a diagram that we have on the side of the Stride Field I/O modules. So this is the one for the combination 4 relay output and 8 digital input, and I also have the one for the analog input. It's 4 channels. So, detailed information contained in the video can be found at accautomation.ca. The link has been put in the description below. If you have not watched the other videos yet, there'll be links in the description below that will start you at video 1. There'll be links to the rest of the videos in the series as well. So let's take a look actually at our hardware that we have. And we have wired the two units. So here we have our power supply, which is the Rhino. It's supplying 24 volts into our combination module, Field I/O, and that combination module, if we look on the screen here, is on a power supply here, anywhere from 10 to 30 or 30 volts DC. And this module actually takes 290 milliamps max. So we have a plus voltage and we have the 0 volts DC on those two terminals, which we see right here. Then what we do is we daisy chain that over to our analog input module, and that analog input module, we'll take a look at its wiring, and you see that we again 20 to 30 volts DC. Takes 220 milliamps max, and here is our plus voltage DC and our 0 volt DC, which is this connector right here. So that is our actual wiring itself to the Stride Field I/O modules. Now, once we have it powered up, you can see that I do have my power indication light on both units here. And the first thing is, on the side of my module, there's an indication that about the default settings. Now, on the default settings, in order to communicate, what we do is we call up a browser, and what we'll do is connect our first combination module with our Ethernet connector. So that pops in. Now we'll be able to communicate using a browser, and when looking on the side of the unit, you can see that my address is 192.168.1.100 as a default. What we'll do is just enter that in or refresh the screen, and sure enough, that's what it comes up with, and it asks for our username and password. Now the username and password again is printed on the side of the module. It is admin, and the password is password. As soon as we hit login, it will actually ask us to please change the password from the default. We'll just hit OK, and then we'll change this password, and we'll put in ACC with a password of ACCA. And that we'll do is save this. Are you sure you want to save it? Yes. Hit OK. And now it's going to ask me again for that same password. We'll put that in, and then we'll log in. Once we're logged in, now we have several different menus here. We have our log out, so we can log out anytime we want of this card. Then we have our left-hand side menu for our module itself. You'll see that this is the module part number, SIO-MB12CDR. Then we have our network settings, system configuration, software, update, username and password, digital input, and digital output for this card. So the first thing we'll do is actually change our IP address, and let's change this to 131 as our setting. And we see we can also change our subnet mask and our default gateway. So, but they are fine the way they are, and we'll hit save. And our socket timeout, by the way, is 10 minutes. So hit save. There we go. And you can see that we're saving, and all of a sudden it's now booted me out because I've actually modified our IP address, and you'll notice that it comes up automatically on the top of my screen here as 192.168.1.100. 131. Again, I will enter my username now that we changed and log in. So now we're logged in. Here's my network settings that we just set. We go down to System Configuration. You'll see that we have the name of the card. We have the Modbus address, and this is used when we're communicating if we don't know it. Now, since we use Modbus TCP, then that has all of the information that we need, and so we can just leave that as a default of Modbus address 1. Our MAC address for this device on our network is shown here, and then we have a couple of different options. We have a Watchdog Enable. Now, Watchdog allows you to monitor and see if communications is still active to the card. If it's not, then it pulls up a trigger and says there's something wrong here. So we can enable or disable that Watchdog. We can then have a Watchdog event. We can enable that. And the Watchdog event means that it will trigger a flag that says, yes, I have a Watchdog problem or situation here. Then we have a power up event, so which indicates how long or when the last time the unit was powered up. So as soon as it powers up, it fires a flag, and then we can reset that flag so that from our program we can tell exactly when things are powering up and powering down. And then you'll see here the Watchdog Enable and then the Watchdog event. We also have the timeout. The timeout's associated with our Watchdog, and we can set that anywhere from 1 to 255 seconds. So right now we're going to leave everything as a default, and we'll go on to our software update. And the software update will allow us to update our firmware that's in this module itself. And so as new features are added or things get changed, we can actually use this part to actually update our software. Then, as we noticed before, this is how we can actually go in and actually change our username and password. And right now it displays it. And so if we want to change it anytime, we can. Then our digital inputs. Now here's our digital inputs, and currently right now this is a read. We can do the continuous read, and it will automatically read and update the information on the screen. So if we had this in the field connected, we can quickly go to the screen and see what's actually happening. Now the rise latch, what it means is that that input has actually turned on the leading edge, and the fall latch means it's turned off on the falling edge. Then we have a counter for each of the inputs, or for the first 4 inputs, and we have a frequency on that counter that we can then see. So we have, again, this column, input state, our rising latch, our falling latch, and then we have a counter for the first 4, and we have a frequency for the first 4. So of our 8 input that we have here. Now, to actually see this, if we were to go back to our diagram, and here is the Modbus addresses associated to that card. So here we have our digital inputs, okay, which are located right here. We have input 0 to input 7, which is our 8 inputs, and they're read-only. Then you can see we have our rising edge, and we have a falling edge for each of those inputs. Then we have our Watchdog events for the whole card, and then we have our frequency and counters for the first 4 bits. So we have a lot of different methods and different items for each of those inputs that we can use within our program. So let's go back to our card here, and then finally we have our digital outputs. Our digital outputs, check the output for which you want to enable. So we can do a power up, and again we can do a Watchdog for this. So a power up means that if we had power failure, we can specify exactly what state we want those outputs to be in when it powers back up again. And in order to test it out, we could also turn on the actual output. So let's just do the first one here. And you can see that I turn that on and it goes off again. Just like that. There's the second one, there's the third one. Next one. So good way of testing out our outputs as we go along. Right? And that's it for our first unit and our combination module. So we can either log out, but we're going to just leave this one active right now. And we'll go back to our digital inputs. There we go. And we can just refresh this. We can hit the on state just to see that again. Refresh. Off state. Refresh. So let's go to our next module. And on our next module, we have our analog input right here. Now notice that we did not connect both of the units to our Ethernet cables directly. That's because they both share the common default address. If we do, then we'd have a problem on our network itself. So let's connect the next module, and we'll plug that in. And what we'll do is start a new browser tab. We'll put in a default, which is 192.168.1.100, and enter. And again, it defaults up there. So we'll type in our default username, which is admin, and password. We'll log in. And once again, it tells us that we must change that password name. So we'll say OK, and we'll change it back to the same that we had before on the previous module. And we'll just hit save. Yes, we want to save that. And now it's going to ask us again for that password. And now we're back into our network settings. Now we have our new board, our analog input board, indicating right here. And on the left hand side, we now have our network settings, system configuration, software update, username and password, and then we have our analog input page. So the first thing we'll do is change our network. Let's change that to 132. And then we'll just hit save. Once we hit save, it'll boot us out and ask for a password again under that new IP address. There we go. So there's our new IP address up here at the top. And we will now enter our credentials. So ACC, and then we'll log in. Now once we're logged in, now we can see our unit. Then we have our system configuration, which is right here. So here's the name of our actual module. Our Modbus address, again, we'll just leave that at 1, because in order to track where we're going with our protocol, it already knows that by the IP address, and it makes sure everything's routed. Our MAC address for this card, and again we have a Watchdog Enable, we have the timeout for that Watchdog, and we have the Watchdog event. And we have a power up event that again is checked automatically, that indicates when we have power applied to that card. Software update is the same as the previous, so as software comes out and it's available, we can have it upgrade. Then we have our username and password where we can change it here. So we've left that as the same as both modules. And then we have our analog input. Now our analog input, you can see here that we have our input type. And the input type can be either the milliamps or we can have it disabled. And that's input 1 or input 0. Then we have input 1, input 2, and up to input 7. So we have actually 8 inputs, but each of those, we really have only 4. You'll see that we have 1 voltage and 1 current for each of those inputs that it specifies in the 4-point module. So we discussed that previously in our hardware discussion. So let's just take a look at our Modbus addresses for this card, and you can see here that we can actually read in from our Modbus TCP our input types, and it's a read-write, so we can actually change them on the fly. Then we have our analog input milliamps, analog input voltage for each of the inputs that we have. Then we have our coil addresses here, and we can actually read those individual coils as the Watchdog Enable, Watchdog Event, and Power Up Event. So in this particular case, what I do is on my device, I actually have a battery that's connected to a potentiometer, and I can turn that, and we can see that as I turn it and I hit read, you can see that the voltage, the value now increases. Let's just increase that a little bit more and hit read again, and you can see that that's working just as we thought. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. If you have any questions about the video, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. If you want more information about us, or you want our free ebooks on numbering systems or bus data logging, please click on the link in the description below to get it. A new video is put out every Monday, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get more videos like this in the future. Remember to click the bell beside your subscription to actually receive those notifications. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.